Sexual anorexia versus intimacy anorexia. That's what we're going to talk about today. And it's a very important topic. If you're married to someone and they're withholding sex from you, you're in a lot of pain, a lot of pain. So I'm going to encourage you to listen to the whole thing because you're going to learn a lot and maybe change your life. Now, if you're not subscribed to our channel, please click subscribe. We've got lots of helpful videos out there for you to be helped by. There's a little button there to be reminded, a little blue thing, the bell, hit that so we can remind you when we get a new one out. And also, I want to hear your questions. If you're in a situation where you're not having sex, you're in pain. You didn't sign up for that. And you might have questions as to why or what you can do or how you can heal. I want to hear your heart. I want to hear your questions. And the only way I'll do that is if you put your question in that box right below the screen. Welcome back. Now we're going to talk about sexual anorexia versus intimacy anorexia. Now, I think you need a little bit of history or background just to understand the difference between these two realities, because you might be living in one or both. And so I want to share that with you. Around the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, in the field of sex therapy, the term sexual anorexia first evolved there. And it was sex therapists trying to describe this person who just refuses to have sex with their spouse, even though they've been married for 5, 10, 50 years. And they just won't do it. And that withholding of sex was what they called sexual anorexia, someone who withholds sex, okay? Now, oddly enough, when you talk about anorexia, usually you think about that skinny person who's withholding food from themselves. With anorexia, be it sexual or intimacy anorexia, they're actually withholding from their spouse. And so the spouse is the one who gets in pain, not the person who's doing it. Now, the sexual anorexia term moved from just the sex therapy field into the sex addiction field. And it was a way of describing the person we were seeing in therapy. I remember in the early 90s sitting in a room with the leaders of sexual addiction, like myself, and we were talking about this person who is an active sex addict and prostitutes, masturbation, pornography, but wasn't having sex with their wife. And we were all seeing the same person all across the country. And the term sexual anorexia got moved over to our field to try to describe this. And now sexual anorexia, so let's be really clear what that is. That is withholding sex from your spouse or your primary relationship. So you're in this marriage, you're in this relationship, and maybe other things are okay. We manage money, we raise kids, but the bedroom is alone. They refuse to have sex with you, whether they're a man or a woman. Sexual anorexia and intimacy anorexia has no gender issue, okay? Either one of them can have it. So you're laying in bed night after night and you're alone and you feel unwanted, uncared for, etc. But maybe the rest of your life is okay. But the pain of being without sex, the pain without being connected to it in that way is real. And the partner betrayal trauma you feel from that is real. And if you don't know about partner betrayal trauma, go to partnerbetrayaltrauma.org and take the test and find out. Now, that's sexual anorexia. And if you're watching this, you're just not having sex. You're trying to figure out why. Now, there can be multiple reasons why. I have a DVD called Sexless and Married, and it goes through 8 reasons. I'm not going to do that here and now, but there are medical reasons like, low thyroid, depression, low testosterone, things like that could be medical issues. But what you're probably dealing with is not medical. So sexual anorexia is withholding sex. Now I'm going to discuss intimacy anorexia, because my clinical experience of over 30 years is when someone's withholding sex, in most cases, they fit this criteria, because it's not about the sex. It's about intimacy and avoiding intimacy. So let me define intimacy anorexia, give you the characteristics, and you can always go to intimacyanorexia.com, take the test there, and see if what I'm talking about fits your spouse or partner. Because if it does, there are solutions, there's help, there's hope, there's healing for you as a partner, and there's also healing for the person who is the intimacy anorexic. So let's walk through this for a moment. Intimacy anorexia is the active withholding of spiritual and emotional and sexual intimacy from the spouse. So it's not just sex. They withhold their heart from you. It feels like you're knocking and no one answers the door. Now, let me go through the characteristics, and I would recommend you just kind of go like this on your hand as I'm going through this and see how many numbers you come up with as you're thinking about the person you're in a relationship with. If these things apply, then the answer might be getting help with intimacy anorexia and the married and alone if you're the spouse, so that you can start working through the healing of this neglect. It is huge. In our partner betrayal trauma, depression, self-esteem, weight issues, actually PTSD symptoms, all kinds of stuff happen to the partner of an intimacy anorexic. And so you're gonna have to take care of yourself, even though you're not the person committing the crime. But let's go through this. Number one, they are too busy for you. They got plenty of time for other people, family members, neighbors, spiritual, political communities, whatever, but not you. You don't get taken out on dates. You don't get quality time. There's not time to just rub your feet for a half hour. Oh, they're too busy. They're too tired. They're distracted. They're entertaining themselves while they're on their phone or on their TV screen or on their computer screen. It can be hours of watching sports and you feel alone. Too busy for you. Number two, they blame you. If something comes up in the marriage or relationship, you're always the one who's responsible for it. You're to blame. If you didn't do this, if you didn't do that, I wouldn't have done this. It's your fault. And rarely will you ever hear, without dragging it out of them, these words: I'm sorry. That was my fault. I did that. I'm wrong. Those are hard words for intimacy anorexics, and there's a lot of reasons why, but you won't hear those very often unless you really pull it out of them or you threaten divorce. Then they might actually own something. But they're too busy for you, they blame you. They withhold love, especially the way you like to be loved. If you like gifts, you don't get them on Christmas and birthday. If you like touch, they roll over to the other side of the bed. If you like praise, you don't hear it. So especially the way you like to be loved. Now, do they know how to do it? Yes. Because when they're in serious trouble with you, they show up for about 7 to 10 days, and then they start pulling away again, okay? And so if you're in that pain for love kind of situation, I have a whole teaching on that. This is real stuff: busy, blame, withholding love, withholding praise. They might talk positively about you with others, but they don't say, you're amazing, you're wonderful, you're a great lover, you're a great friend, you're patient, you're kind. You don't hear the amazingness that you are, and you ache to hear it from the person who said they would love, honor, and cherish you, but you don't hear it. They withhold spiritually, even if they're rabbis, pastors, spiritual leaders, New Age leaders, doesn't matter. They don't connect with you spiritually through prayer or readings or any kind of contact like that. They avoid that. Also, they withhold sex. And this is where it gets a little confusing, because a sexual anorexic withholds sex, but an intimacy anorexic withholds a lot more than sex. And you're in a lot more pain, because you're not only not getting sex, you're not getting their heart, you're not getting their spirit, you're not getting connected to. You are not being valued, and you feel it every single day. And it dries your heart, and you actually ache from not being connected to. That's more likely intimacy anorexia than it is sexual anorexia, okay? So they withhold the sex from you. They're unwilling or unable to share their feelings with you. They can't get to like what's really going on and share it with you and say, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. And really, they're not that interested in you sharing your feelings either, but getting them to share their feelings is like work. They use anger and silence as a way to control you. If you bring up a need, or you somehow try to give them a suggestion or suggest that they're not thinking correctly, you could not be spoken to for hours, days, or weeks, or you could be yelled at and they could shoot. I call it shield or shoot. And so the anger or the silent treatment can go on, and it's very painful. They have ongoing or ungrounded criticism of you. It's like constant. It's like they have this negative story about you, and you're like, who are you talking about? That's not what I'm thinking. That's not what I'm planning. That's not my motive. And if you notice, it's always negative, because that creates distance from you. And so they can have that. They can control or shame around money issues, but that's kind of a smaller amount of them. And lastly, you feel like a roommate. You feel married and alone. That's why we have a lot of products called Married and Alone, because you feel married and alone. It's like you're not just roommates, you feel even more alienated than that. Because a roommate would treat you with respect and you would feel honored. Where when you're married to an intimacy anorexic, you feel like an object, you feel like you're a piece of furniture, you feel like you're just orbiting around their life. You're not really in their life, it's not an organic relationship, it doesn't feel like we're lovers and buddies and friends. And so these are big distinctions. So if you're living in a relationship without sex, and if this helps you, I would definitely check out intimacyanorexia.com. If this isn't the answer for you, check out Sexless and Married, because there's a lot of other reasons why you might be not having sex. And I want to encourage you, if you're the spouse or the partner listening to this, there's lots of YouTubes and information that we have for you, because you're in the pain. The person withholding is not the one in pain, just like the alcoholic is not the one in pain, it's the spouse of the alcoholic. You're the one who's seeking out information and trying to find out where to get counseling, where to get support groups, where to get materials. How can I learn more about this? Please check out the resources that we've mentioned, because it can help you and you can take your first step. Even if they don't change one bit, you can start your next step. Now, if you haven't subscribed to our channels, please do hit that. If you haven't asked a question and you want to, please do that. I want to hear your heart, and I would really like to hear that you took your next step.